was found near a twin and...
Well, there is no denying that a lot of you have seen Victor Salva's 2001 horror film. What many of you may not know is that the film was actually based on a true story. That being said, of course, the creeper isn't real. The whole thing is a work of fiction, and thank God for that. Even the mere thought of the monstrous winged nightmare coming back to life every 23 years so that it can feed on human flesh straight away for 23 days is capable of scaring the living daylights out of one. But then again, if you take a look at the film's beginning, it was actually based on a real story, or in other words, an actual situation that had taken place. Well, this brings us to the main content of today's video, where we will be exploring the real-life Jeepers Creepers. Mind you, this is going to be an interesting analysis of what really took place, and we will be delving into the criminal acts of a certain someone named Dennis Depew. Are you ready? Let's get right into the video then. But before we get into it, we do have one very small request. If you enjoy our videos, then please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Now, let's begin. It was in the year 1990 that 46-year-old Michigan dweller Dennis Depew murdered his former wife, Marilyn, and dumped her body. While it is true that Victor Salva is only given credit to Steven Spielberg's 1971 action thriller flick Duel as the main inspiration for his movie Jeepers Creepers, it's pretty apparent that the opening sequence of Salva's movie has been a direct lifting of the documentary TV series Unsolved Mysteries, Season 3, Episode 23. To be more precise, which screened a reenactment of the whole story with emphasis on Depew's crime. Let's get into the details, shall we? This will help you have a better idea. So on 15th of April 1990, which, mind you, was also an Easter Sunday, Ray and Marie Thornton were driving on Snow Prairie Road in Coldwater, Michigan. While they drove along, they played their usual game, coming up with words and phrases from car license plates that passed them by. With a Chevy van coming up behind their car and passing them by rather aggressively, Mary noticed the vanity plate that had the letters GZ followed by the numbers. This has Marie exclaiming, "Geez, that guy is in a rush," and thereby winning that particular round of the game. The couple did not realize back then that their leisurely Sunday outing would place them right in the middle of a strange, ominous mystery.
Van again, they see a man and he looks like he's holding a blanket or a sheet that is...
Witnessing Depew doing his dirty deed, the couple continues driving, and a few miles down the road, they come across an abandoned old school house. There, they spot the same Chevy van parked between the school and a large tank. However, this time, they're also able to see the man who was driving the vehicle earlier, holding some kind of a blanket or sheet that looks soaked in blood. Alarmed and not trying to draw attention to themselves, Ray and Marie leave from there immediately. The couple is already a few miles down the road when they, to their horror, find the same Chevy van approaching them from behind. The van follows them closely for several miles until the Thorntons pull off and head down a different road. When the Thorntons look into their rearview mirror, they notice the van has also stopped at the intersection, and this is when they decide to turn around to get a proper description of the van along with the license plate, because by then, they're pretty sure that the man in the van was definitely up to something, as he was acting rather suspicious. Ron and Marie drive back to the intersection to find the man changing the number plates of his van. That's not all. The passenger door of the van is also open, and there is a ton of blood inside, as well as on the door. Horrified, they leave in their car instantly and head back to the school again to gather more information. Upon reaching, they walk down to where they had seen the man earlier and find a little animal hole and a bloody sheet stuffed inside in part. It becomes clear that the man was attempting to dispose of the blood-soaked sheet down the hole, and he was not wholly successful in doing so. Also, to those of you wondering if Depew had anything to do with inside of the school, hear us out when we say he didn't. Marilyn's body was not found in the school. Depew had just pulled over at the abandoned school to stash the sheet that was covered in blood, and in all probability, to find a secure spot to dump the body as well. Anyway, coming back to the Thorntons, they decided to notify the police right away. But what they didn't realize is that they had chanced upon the very evidence of a shockingly gruesome crime, one that marked a rather devastating disintegration of a family. The actual story of the debuts. Whatever we have mentioned up until now has happened right after what took place at the debut residence. Well, this brings us to the debuts, finally. Dennis and Marilyn were reported to have been married for 18 long years, after which they got divorced. As part of the divorce settlement, Dennis had his visitation rights. On April 15th of 1990, Dennis came over to Marilyn's home to pick up the children, but the kids weren't that keen on going with him. This resulted in an argument between the children and Dennis, and Marilyn intervened in the situation. Dennis got hyper and pushed Marilyn down the stairs. Dennis's 3 children also saw their father beating up their mother right in front of them. One of the kids ran over to their neighbor's residence to call for help. Marilyn was badly hurt and even semi-conscious, if we may add here. Dennis somehow got Marilyn out of the house and told the children that he was taking her to the hospital. Well, he never really took her to a hospital, and that was the last time the children saw their mother alive. Dennis shot Marilyn in the back of her head, most likely in the same van, and that is the sole reason why the van was covered in blood in the first place. When the Thorntons saw Dennis near the school, he was, in all probability, trying to dispose of the bloody sheet that he had wrapped Marilyn's body in. Also, the animal hole that Dennis had shoved the sheet inside was not that big, and with the Thorntons heading back to the school later, they found the sheet sticking out of the hole. We don't know what is true since there's different information available stating different things, but it is believed that Dennis dumped Marilyn's body behind a desolate church, after which he drove his Chevy to the school to get rid of the blood-soaked sheet. Also, as per reports, there are some who assert that Marilyn's body was discovered buried behind an old church, while others claim that the body was found on the side of the road by a highway worker. Whatever be the case, things ended horribly for Marilyn, and there's no denying that.
Husband. Dennis pushed Marilyn down the basement stairs as the children served witness to the assault. He then began beating her at the bottom of the staircase.
The real reason that led to the murder of Marilyn. A lot was going on. There was always too much arguing, with Dennis and Marilyn not seeming to get along anymore. Their marriage had become loveless, and Marilyn was also tired of being controlled. With her not being allowed to make decisions that she wanted to make, she was already looking at a divorce. However, it was Dennis who did not want the divorce, and despite his numerous attempts to keep their marriage intact, the duo's marital decay ultimately had them headed for divorce. No wonder many believe that Dennis killed Marilyn out of sheer rage, and also the fact that he held her responsible for turning their children against him.
And he ended up shooting himself, I believe in Mississippi, in the head.
Debut, the subject of a police manhunt. By the time the police were looking for Debut, he had already disappeared after having killed his ex-wife. Eventually, family and friends began to get these wild, rambling letters from Debut, who was on the run by then. The letters were more like lengthy rants justifying his act as to why he killed Marilyn, and that his actions were completely justified. Debut blamed Marilyn for turning his family against him, and that he did not have anything left. And adding to this, he believed that he was a little too old to start things over. The murder on air. On March 20th, 1991, almost a year after the murder, Unsolved Mysteries aired a segment on the Debut case. The night the episode was broadcast, a woman by the name of Mary came back home in Dallas and was quite surprised to find her boyfriend Hank Queen's Chevy van parked in her driveway instead of the vehicle being in the garage. As soon as she entered her home, Hank told her that he had to make an emergency trip back home as his mother was extremely ill. Hank was already packing his stuff in a bag when he asked Mary to make him a few sandwiches for the road, further stating that it was a long journey. While it did strike Mary that something else was going on, she was not sure what it was. So she made a few sandwiches and packed a few sodas as well for her boyfriend. No points for guessing that this Hank Queen was Dennis Debut, who was living a whole different life in Dallas, having also taken on a new identity. Naturally, when Dennis saw the episode that showcased him murdering his ex-wife, he panicked for obvious reasons. Of course, he knew that he had to get out of there as soon as possible, and that is why he concocted a lie to his then-girlfriend and left that very night. It was Mary's friend who notified the authorities, telling them about her friend's boyfriend, or in other words, Dennis Debut, and even provided them with a license plate number of his van. The police found Debut the very night the latter attempted to leave at the area. It was a high-speed chase and a very long pursuit indeed. Debut ended up shooting at the officers using his gun, and also made it through 2 police roadblocks, before finally shooting himself in the head and committing suicide. Dennis's grave is situated right next to his parents' grave, grave with the same matching stone and Eagle Cemetery in LaGrange County, Indiana. And as for Marilyn, one could not find her exact location in Oakland Hill Cemetery since she hasn't been given a marked grave or even a headstone for that matter. Come to think of it, it's a metaphor of how perpetrators are often remembered more than their victims, and truth be told, it's pretty ghoulish.
Her boyfriend, whom she knew as Hank Queen, told her he needed to make an emergency trip home because his mother had fallen ill. She noticed Hank.
Marvelous verdict. Well, that is all for today. And with this, we finally come to the concluding chapter of a resentful, heated friction between a husband and his wife, which ended in murder. So, what do you think about the real-life Jeepers Creepers? We would love to know about your thoughts in the comments section down below. And we sincerely hope you have gotten your fill of news for today. Now, if you enjoyed this video, you know what to do. Please do leave a thumbs up and stay tuned with us, as we promise to come back with more exciting content. Till then, goodbye, and thanks for watching. Have a nice one.